All right, everybody, and hello and welcome back to the FLA podcast. I am super excited here to be sitting down with my guest today, Pat Bro, who is going to be talking about his story of overcoming essentially, a lot of adversity in his life and being able to overcome overstimulation and anxiety in order to cultivate not just better performance in your business as a real estate entrepreneur or entrepreneur of any kind, but also actually living a better, more confident life. So he is the author of the book, The Real Confident You, where he shares his story of overcoming that adversity and actually applying that into living a better, more purpose-driven, intent-driven lifestyle that you can actually really enjoy. So I think this is a very relevant topic. A lot of people are suffering, especially now in this market, right, where things aren't going really well in the real estate world, and a lot of changes happening, right? So a lot of anxiety, possibly depression. I know it's not something people like to share, but if you are experiencing that or feel like you're on the verge of experiencing that, this episode is definitely for you. So Pat, man, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you here. I know we were trying to schedule this for a little bit, but I'm excited that you are here joining us today.
Yeah, Kobe, thank you for having me. First of all, I'm really excited to be on the show and really excited to talk to your audience. And also really thankful that you're safe and doing well with all the hurricanes going on in Houston and that you've got power on and that we're able to have this conversation. So first of all, prayers out to anybody that's dealing with power outages and the infrastructure problems that exist in Tampa, but not in Tampa, in Texas. But you know, very excited to be on the show today.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man, and I appreciate you thinking of us and being flexible. Because I remember when I reached out, it was the day of the podcast that we had originally scheduled to record this on. But you were flexible enough, and I'm really grateful for that as well. I'm really grateful that we're back to relatively normal here, and we'll be building back as well. But Pat, man, before we get started and dig into anything, I'd love for you to be able to share your story
Yeah.
and tell us a little bit about who you are, some of the things that you had to overcome and how you were able to do that to get you to where you are today.
Yeah, fantastic. So, um, I guess starting off with really, um, we should go back to in the year 2020, before the pandemic, shared an article about my story and what I'd been going through and how I had gotten to the success that I was in my life. At that point, I was running a radio station. I had taken a job that was top five hardest to get out of college on the Forbes list. I was, by all measurable accounts, really successful in my life and had really transformed my life. But as a teenager, I tried to take my own life. And so I released an article about kind of what that journey was like, right? How did I transfer? And also, it was something that people really wouldn't have guessed from me, right? I'm a happy, peppy, fun guy, and it's just something that I thought people should know because I knew that there was other people struggling, but also I wanted to tell people how my life had transformed. So I released that article in 2020. It went insanely viral, and 4 years later, I turned it into a book. And so that book is now a number one new release on Amazon. This is the first week of it out. It's been very successful, but which I feel very lucky and privileged for. But that's a continuation of telling what that journey is and what that journey was. So starting from that 16-year-old, I had a panic attack disorder. So I moved around a lot as a kid. I was a military kid. So my dad, we moved every 3 years to a new space. Anybody who's had a parent who's in the military understands what I'm saying. And so I never felt like I had an identity or a home. And a lot of my problems were exacerbated by the times that we live in now, right? Social media. I was in high school kind of as those things came around. Overstimulation. All of the kind of the classic everyday things that we see, I think are universal, really affected me more with some of my predispositions to depression and anxiety. Um, every class running to the bathroom and having panic attacks, having trouble talking to people, having trouble with, getting in front of people and having conversations. And then to parlay that into 4 years later, speaking publicly, I was my graduation's commencement speaker. I did that on Facebook Live, by the way, because of COVID, which is the worst experience you could possibly imagine. And then selling to C-suite executives for the entirety of my career and climbing up the ladder that way. So it's been an incredible journey and excited to talk about it.
I think, just right off the bat, man, I appreciate you just sharing that because there's a lot of people who've gone through it, right, who are going through things like that. And, you just being able to, being willing to share that, I think will and has helped a lot of people
Yeah.
who, may be experiencing this in one way or another, right, in their lives. And I think one of the first things I'll have to ask is, you mentioned you had a predisposition to a lot of, kind of mental health,
Yeah.
issues that came up, depression, anxiety. I think a lot of people out there, they don't think that this is something that they will ever experience in their lives. They kind of see it from, seeing themselves outside of that. So
Mhm.
when you say that, what would you say to people who are currently like maybe in a good situation or maybe kind
Yeah.
of feeling themselves spiraling a little bit? What should they be doing as far as active steps to prevent falling into a deep spiral, and how should they be prepared to recover from that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good and valid question. I think to start with, I think most people live in ignorance of their own mental health issues. Um, they think this is me, this is who I am. A lot of people refer to themselves maybe as angry or what, like quirks that they would consider their personality are actually things that they could work on and change, but they just think exists within them. It's who I am. It's what I was born with. Um, I also think the numbers, if you look at them, are pretty staggering. That more than likely, even if it's not going to affect you, it's going to affect someone you know pretty soon. Um, if we look at statistics of teenage girls from the advent of social media in 2010 to now, from the day Instagram launched to today, the numbers have gone from 10% of teenage girls being in some sort of manic depression state to above 60%. 1 in 5 high school students have contemplated suicide. So it's a number that's continuing to grow, and I don't wish it on anybody, but I do think our modern society and our modern context leans people into it. And I also think if it's not a true mental health issue, I think there are weights of modern society that weigh on everybody,
Yeah, there is. And I
regardless.
think, it's interesting you mentioned social media, right? Because I
Yeah,
think that's been a topic of conversation a lot with people.
yeah,
And, in the business world, I see this, people think about, a lot of, younger kids or young adults
yeah,
have struggles with that mental health, seeing on social media different other people out there, right, comparing themselves and different things like that. But in the business world, I see this a lot as well, right? Because there's
sure.
a lot of influencers out there, a lot of
Agreed.
people with big followings who are promoting a course or education system or coaching, whatever they're
Right.
promoting. And if you're starting out in business, or even if you've been in business for a while and relatively successful, it can be hard to see that, right? See
Yeah.
other people kind of succeeding at a level
No.
that might not
Oh,
seem
agreed.
realistic. So, what is your
And,
strategy for
and
that?
it's because it is. I think it's because is unrealistic, right? If you go on LinkedIn on any day of the week, no one will ever tell you that their boss yelled at them on Tuesday. No one will ever tell you that they didn't hit their Q2 targets. They won't tell you that, hey, the real estate market is absolutely garbage right now. And compared to 2022, I'm genuinely considering transferring careers because I'm not making the money that I need to. Right? You only see the happy announcements. And so if you looked at anybody, I would argue LinkedIn is maybe the worst social media site for this. LinkedIn's incredibly valuable and everybody should use it and I love it. But I think you need to actively tell yourself these are not these people's professional lives at all. Um, Not to mention, I mean, if you look at salespeople, they just lie about their job title on LinkedIn, right? I mean, like none of it's real. So I think you need to actively tell yourself that it's not real. And I think disengaging from it as much as possible is a very important tool. Stop reading. Don't read your feed. If you see something that you don't like, you can tell the feed not to show you that, right? Like something that I like to implement in my life is I call it my algorithm cleanup crew. You can do this on all your social media, by the way. Look at the top 10 posts that you're getting on TikTok or on Facebook or on Instagram or on LinkedIn. And of those top 10, what you don't like, tell the app that you do not like it and it will get out of your algorithm that kind of content, right? Like you can manually adjust things that are gonna that you don't like in your life. You can push them out, right? Don't rely on LinkedIn to feed you the kind of content you need. If you like the value driven stuff, make sure you're engaging with the value driven stuff and not with the stuff that's reflecting on other people's lives.
Yeah, that's very important, right? Is, really
Yeah.
staying disciplined to
Yes. Yeah. Of
essentially,
course.
yeah, staying
Yeah.
disciplined to make sure that you're not being consumed by the algorithm, and you're
Yeah.
rather telling it what to do. And that was kind of my next question as well, because a lot of people use LinkedIn, use Instagram, right?
Yeah. Of
Social media sites to grow their business. So they have to kind of be on there to a certain degree,
course.
and it's really difficult for people to like that to juggle, being productive and not actually, doing marketing on those sites
Of
rather
course.
than just being consumed by it. So what would you say to people who are, leveraging social media, but
Yeah.
they don't want to be consumed by it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that you can do. First of all, when you go on vacation, that means you turn off your social media too. Um, when you aren't going to be posting anything on the weekend, right? Let's say you're using your Instagram in a marketing capacity and you have posts scheduled out for maybe Saturday and Sunday, but you're not going to be actively engaging with anything that's going to actually deliver value to your life. Delete the app from your phone till Monday. Don't give yourself the temptation, right? Um, schedule posts out for 2 weeks and then delete social media from your phone for 2 weeks and see what kind of an addict to social media you are and how much you don't actually need it. Right. I get that maybe you want to engage with your customers or whatever. That's fine. Pick an hour a day that you're going to download it, but test yourself. See how much you're relying on it for actual productivity and how much you're just using it to doom scroll and fill your life. Right.
No, I love that, and I think one of the things that also works is just logging out.
Of
Right, it
course.
might not be, but if you can control yourself
Yeah.
from logging back in, then you could probably control yourself from
Mhm.
re-downloading the app as well. So just logging out, deleting the app from your phone, that's even
Yeah. Of
better, right? Making it intentional, right, is what I'm hearing from
course.
what you're saying.
Course, yeah, and make it systematic too, right? Don't just do it on a whim. I do it quarterly. I do a dopamine detox quarterly, so I'll remove all my social media apps from my phone for 2 weeks every quarter. And it is the most insane experience when you re-download those apps. First of all, that first week, you do realize that you are actually physically addicted to your phone, and your hand will start reaching for it to do stuff when you haven't consciously thought of it. No matter what your screen time is, I don't care if it's 45 minutes, you're lying to yourself. Like, we're all kind of addicted to these things, right? They're built to be addictive. That's the whole purpose of they're built to, they're cigarettes. Um, Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, got in a lot of trouble. He's like, they called him a class trader because he called Meta basically a cigarette company. But that's what these things are designed to do, right? They're designed to be addictive. So you need to take active and intentional steps in your life to separate yourself from the addictive qualities and only use the qualities that are positive. So anyway, that first week of a dopamine detox, like when you delete the apps from your phone, you will feel like a junkie. And then the second week, you're going to realize how much better your life is. And then you re-download those apps on your phone and you look through like Instagram Reels or something and you feel disgusting and you don't want to do it anymore. And so over time, it decreases just your want to be on the apps because most of the time we're not providing value to our lives. Um, Unless you're actively seeking it and being intentional about it, you'll find it, but it's not 90% of what you're watching, guaranteed.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So I love that, detoxing, almost treating it like an actual addiction, right?
Yeah.
From, some kind of substance, right? So when
Yeah.
you go back to it, you actually feel pretty disgusting, right? Like you mentioned,
Yeah.
you feel it, you actually don't want that feeling anymore, and that's very helpful, I think, for a lot of people to understand it and to try that. I mean, for anybody going through it, right? For anybody who is maybe going through a detox or wanting to go through a detox, right? Maybe they're afraid of experiencing some kind of withdrawal
Of
symptoms
course.
or not knowing what
Yeah.
to do with their time. What would you suggest for that, right? How do you fill up that time so that you're not always thinking about going back and re-downloading those apps?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point as well. It's another point to intentionality, right? I like to schedule my dopamine detoxes around times that I really don't want to be on my phone. So if you're taking a vacation, if you have a really heads down time at work, if your work doesn't involve social media, like when I wrote the book, I went without social media for 2 months. Right. I just completely separated from it. I was like a villager off the grid. It was crazy. I did miss it after a while though. But it's being really intentional with filling up that time. I also think though you will quickly find that you have a lot of things that you have been putting off in your life or that you could be doing right now. Like even if it's a Saturday night and you don't have social media and you realize you haven't looked your partner in the eyes and had a conversation with them like really intentionally in a while, all those kind of things fill up very quickly when you realize there isn't this vacuum sucking up your time.
Wow. Yeah, that's very powerful. I mean, think about social media as something that's sucking away from, what you ought to be doing, essentially.
Yeah.
It's not something that, you don't have all that free time if you think
Right.
about it, right? You don't have more free time. You're just filling it up. Like you're just filling your time up with different things that, that isn't conducive to your productivity or your health or
Yeah.
relationships. You're just filling it up with a bunch of junk, right? Which is going through social media and flipping through the apps as well. So I think that's a very powerful point you just made there, and really kind of want to go back to that a little bit later with some of the other things that I kind of want to talk about on that end of simulation. But really, I wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk with you about how were you able to pull yourself out of the situation that you were in when you were in high school, right? Because right now you're very successful. You have, you've wrote a book, you've had an article go viral, you're on many different podcasts, right? So, how did that change, right? What I'm sure it was a gradual change, but
Yeah.
what shifted? Was there a moment where you just kind of realized that things needed to change, or was it, what kind of pushed you forward to start putting your life in more of a positive direction?
Yeah, I think this conversation is starting to get a theme about intentionality, right? And I think it's because it was the most powerful force in my life. Um, I wish I could say that there is like, and I think this is true of everybody in everybody's life, right? Like when you figure out your career is your career, or that light bulb hits in life, like there never really is that moment, right? Of like, aha, my life has changed. I figured out the magical thing. And that's actually part of what I really warn about on podcasts in my book is anybody that tells you that they have like a quick fix for your life's problems is lying to you. Because there is no quick fix to anything. It's one of the as Americans, it's one of the things that we do probably the most poorly, right? Is like if I had a magical destimulation make you happy pill, like I promise you I would be selling that on Amazon and not this book. Like it takes a lot longer to read and I make a lot less money on this book. But what I will say is it's a constellation of things. It was one, finding a passion for business in my life. I think passion drives everybody. Um, and two, it's taking care of my physical health. I think your physical health in turn will help your mental health. But really, I wish I could point to one, but it's such a constellation of different things, and that's really what I go over in the book. It's probably 250 pieces of individual advice, all of which will probably impact your life.
That's really good. So, I mean, so you mentioned finding your passion, right? Was one of the things that really helped, kind of change the path that you were on. So I think a lot of people who are struggling now, like maybe they're in a,
Yeah.
like in real estate, right? They're in a very high, I guess high demand if their time job, more of a sales job, kind of very
Yeah, of
aggressive out there. Who might be doing really well, but
course.
might not be their passion, or the way they're doing their business might not be their passion. What can people be looking at in their daily lives to really realize whether or not they are currently working their passion, or they should be, maybe looking at different things, or changing up what they're doing currently
Yeah.
to make it work better?
Yeah. And I'm glad that you didn't preface that with saying like how do people find their passion? Because I think actually everybody or how does someone know that they have a passion? I think everybody has a passion. And it's actually pretty evident in your daily life. If you love video games, you spend a lot of time doing video games. That's your passion. Like you're passionate about video games. Um, so if you're currently working in a job and you find it not fulfilling as the things that you do outside of work, right? Whether it's you love, you're at your job 40 hours a week, but you're doing this volunteer thing on the side and you're getting more fulfillment out of that. Maybe that's the realm you need to chase, right? Or, you enjoy video games or whatever it is, right? But what I will say is then if you find out that passion is video games or music or whatever it is, something that's non-conventional, one, don't stake your career on it. But two, find a way to work at it, right? Playing video games is a hobby, but hosting a video game convention isn't a hobby. That's something purposeful, right? Go to your local Comic Con and find out where you can volunteer. I don't know anything about video games, but find out where you can volunteer to be to work an event. Or that's when you take something from something that's nascent, but you're passionate about to something that's difficult and actually providing value to your life and you're passionate about, right? If you're really like, for me, I'm really into music, right? And I'm really into sports. So when I was in college, I was really lucky enough to join our college radio station. It fell perfectly into those things. And then I started devoting my entire life to it. Um, from there, when the radio station lost funding, I started selling ads because we needed money. And then I figured out I was really good at sales and I love sales. And that's how I parlayed that into a career at the first firm I worked at, which has gotten me to where I am today. And so really it's taking the things that you love and finding ways to make them difficult and work at them, right? Finding ways to make them purposeful in your life. So it's not only giving value to you, but value to others. And then the dollars will print themselves, I promise.
Yeah, I like that. There's a lot of people out there who maybe give advice that's a little bit more out there, right?
Yeah.
Find your passion and just stake your life on it, right? It's
Yeah.
maybe not very conventional for a lot of people.
Yeah,
It's
like you got to feed your kids. Like I'm not going to tell you like, don't bet your entire life on recording YouTube videos of you singing and like you are going to take off. No, probably not, but you could probably be an A&R rep. Like there's always work to be done in around everything that you love. Truly. There's somewhere that you can fill in the cracks.
Yeah. And do you think there's a way where people can start incorporating what they're doing into their jobs or their business and their careers, right?
Yeah, of
Incorporating their
course.
passions into a way where it's not taking away, but actually adding to their career advancement.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think all anything that you're working towards purposefully provides value to all other things that you're doing. So Miyamoto Musashi, the book of the five rings, right? Once I see the way in one thing, I can see it broadly. Like if you master one thing, it gives you skills that apply to everything else. So as long as you're working on developing skills and getting better at something, it will apply to your work, right? Now you have to be disciplined enough for it to not distract from your work, right? Like if you're doing the Comic Con thing, like you don't plan the Comic Con thing while you're at work, right? But that planning the Comic Con thing probably makes you better organized and more diligent in your sales cycles when you're selling a house in real estate, right? It makes you more like you will learn skills in whatever you're doing that will apply to the main thing. And then eventually the main thing might get eclipsed by that. Um, just because who knows, you find another route to make money. But nevertheless, anything that you're working at diligently and passionately, like as long as you are intentional, you fail, you learn, you keep going, like you're going to learn skills that will apply, right? Like me speaking on radio does not seem to directly correlate to a sales career at all, but it does, right? I learned how to talk. I learned how to think quickly on my feet, right? When I'm talking to a CEO of a Fortune 500 retail company, um, the ability to think quickly and hear what they're saying and quickly move it into something else was all learned because I was sitting next to a 350-pound offensive lineman who knew way more about football than me. And I need to take one piece of what he's saying, translate it, and give it to an audience of, a couple thousand people, right? Like skills all find their way to manifest themselves in different ways in your life. And you'll never really know how unless you continue to get uncomfortable and learn to change.
Oh wow, yeah, that's really good, man. I'm really glad you said that because there's people out there who who keep it separate in their minds, right? Keep their
Right.
passions and their hobbies separate from their careers and their business, right? But if you are able to do that, right, you're able to take from different things that are going on in your life and then actually, like you said, be intentional about it, right? Be
Yeah.
intentional about applying skills that you're learning in one area and reapplying it in another area where it's, productive to your income, to, building your wealth, right? Your
Mhm.
lifestyle, whatever it is. Then that could be really helpful. And, by making that connection, I think, that will, in a way make your jobs or, whatever you're doing more fun because you're
Yeah.
making that connection. And in that, you're creating more of a, that link between your passion and your livelihood.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So yeah, so I think I wanted to, now kind of revisit the stimulation aspect
Yeah.
of, what you were talking about earlier, because social media, right? We talked about social media earlier.
Yeah.
That is one thing that stimulates and creates a lot of anxiety in a lot of people. But I don't think it's just social media, right? When you're in a
No.
sales career or when you're in real estate, right? There's a lot of stimulation that happens from just the clients you're servicing, people you're working with, lenders,
Hmm.
vendors, right? People like that. So, what is your strategy if you even have one when it comes to dealing with, all the other demands of life, right? Because I think I saw
Yeah.
somewhere where, this is like the only time in history where, we have our smartphones and this is the only time where we're able to be essentially accessible 24/7
Yeah.
hours out of the entire day. Where in
Yeah.
the past you actually have to wait for, the message, you have to be
Yeah.
around a phone to be
Yeah.
reached. So how are we dealing with that? How is that affecting us in our performance and our moods and our mental health? And how do we, not fall into that trap as well?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point because I think there's a multitude of factors. And if you're anything like me, which I'm sure you are as well, and all of your listeners are in the real estate world, you kind of seek stimulation. You're a bit of a stimulation junkie, right? Like you need a little bit of those vibrations to get you going. Like that's what I love about sales, and I'm sure it's what you love about real estate is that like I do like that my notifications are like that my inbox is triple digits when I don't check it for a day. like that there's work always constantly done. Like I like that. Like I thrive in that environment. I don't know if I like it as much as like my general anxiety actually it transfer like you got to learn how to use that's a whole side point, but you got to learn how to use the things that like maybe you aren't as good at into transferring them into things that will make you successful, right? Things that some people see as negatives often are positives if you use them the right way. But I'd like to take a step back for a second. So in the book, I laid this out. Basically, I if you look at all the analysis, every single human in America right now is overstimulated. And it what it really does is it causes you to move out of a kind of consciously aware state. So your brain works, and this is going to be very quick. I know you didn't ask for an anatomy lesson, but you have basically two parts of your brain, right? You have kind of the animal instinctual part, and then you have the human part, right? The human part is like all the pink wrinkly stuff that we associate with the brain when you see it out, and then the stem of your brain is really what most animals have. When we are overstimulated, the human part of our brain is actually overly preoccupied, right? And so we move into the reactionary state, right? All of our long-term habits actually come from like an animal state, right? Um, we're really only consciously aware of about 10% of the decisions we make in a day. 90% of the time, we're completely unconscious of what we're doing, which is smart, right? Because I don't want to think every time that I pick up this water bottle and drag it to my lips that I need to do it, right? Or when I have to go to the bathroom, like I don't have to consciously say to myself, I have to pee. Step, 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 open door. Like you don't do that. You just go and do it because you have these long-term habits that are filled in your brain. But when you're overstimulated, you only use that part of your brain. And that part of your brain is highly anxious and highly reactionary. Um, and if you don't think you're an overstimulated person, I actually have this list of things of like telltale habits of overstimulated people that I'd love to read to you, Kobe, and hear your thoughts on. Okay. Number one, do you watch TV as background noise when you play on your phone? Number two, do you work or do homework with music playing in the background to help you focus? Number three, do you need a podcast, TV, or white noise to fall asleep? Number four, do you have music playing while you're in the shower? Number five, can you eat without TV, YouTube, music, or any social media when you're alone? Number six, can you make it through an episode of TV without checking your phone? Excuse me. Number seven, have you sat in silence comfortably with no technology usage for more than 20 minutes in the past month? Number eight, when you talk to people, do you lose focus after a certain amount of time? Number nine, do you sleep less than 8 hours regularly? Number 10, you realize your phone isn't near you. Do you freak out? Do you sleep next to your phone? Can you work out without looking at your phone or besides for skipping a song? Can you concentrate on work for more than a few minutes? Can you do household chores without music and TV? Do you check your phone when you're driving? Can you make it through a chapter of a book uninterrupted? Do you experience anger daily? Are you easily agitated? Do you need caffeine to get through daily tasks? Do your eyes hurt? Would you describe your posture as slouched? Do you have mid back pain? Is there something that you're procrastinating right now? Do you impulse buy? Let's see. There's a million of these, right? Do you clench your jaw? Do you have routine digestive issues? Can you stand in line in a public place with strangers without being glued to your phone? Anyway, all of those things probably applied to your listeners. It's because we're all overstimulated. And it's a combination of our phones and the constant notifications. It's the environments in which we live, right? Most of us live in cities that are loud and things are going on a million miles a minute. It's because our forms of entertainment are all on screens, TVs, etc. We are stimulation junkies who are addicted to it. And so you need to manually reset yourself out of it. So in the book, I go over some breathing techniques that are used by Navy SEALs and such that stop my panic attacks like dead in their tracks. I haven't had one in 10 years. I used to have them like 6 times a day. And really help you just manually reset, and it moves your brain out of that reactionary state, which by the way, when you're overstimulated like that, your brain is producing the kind of fear that it thinks that there's a saber-tooth tiger next to you. Because that's how our ancient brains work, right? It doesn't know how to mitigate what level of stress you're in. You're just in a high level reactionary state. So you need to manually adjust that and relax and set yourself back and sit in stillness for a little while and get yourself back to a state where your conscious brain is what's working.
Wow. Yeah. So I think that list it really opened the eyes of a lot of people, right? Whether or not they think they're overstimulated or not, because I think we all are. I think you're
Yeah.
absolutely correct on that. I think we
By the
all
way,
are.
all those things apply to me. Like it's not like I'm not your guru, by the way. Like anybody listen to this, I'm not your guru. Like I'm deeply flawed. I have a lot of problems. As does anybody, and anybody who says they don't, like, don't buy their book. I also don't buy my book if you're not interested by me. But like anyway, like there's a lot of charlatans out there. Like there's a lot of people selling fake stuff. Like everybody has problems and is flawed, and this is a main one we all have.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
that's probably the most important thing is to admit that to yourself,
of
because
course.
if you don't admit that to yourself, there's no, you can't improve that, right? If
Right.
you think you're perfect, there's no room for improvement. So, but I think like one of the things for, especially for real estate agents out there is,
Mhm.
they feel like if they have a client or even a prospective client, right, they have to kind of be there for them 24/7, right? They
Mhm.
always say that, I'm always available. You can always reach
Of
me, call
course.
me, text
Yeah.
me anytime. I understand where they're coming from, but I
Mhm.
have my opinions on that. Do you think that is something that is healthy to do, or should they be working in a little bit more structured manner, right? They shouldn't be
Yeah.
available 24/7 by text or by phone. They shouldn't be able to respond to a super long text with super technical information at 3 a.m. in the morning or take a call at 12 a.m. in the morning. Should they be implementing some type of structure or boundaries so that way they're not overworking themselves, overstimulating themselves, and constantly in a state of essentially stress,
Yeah.
if you think about it.
Yeah, I think you need to intentionally block off time. You have to. And I fell victim to that a lot. I mean, again, I work with C-suite executives, right? So I would get calls at 2 o'clock in the morning of like, hey, I had an idea about the deal, blah, 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 blah. What are we gonna do? Right. And I would take the call. And I think it's really tempting early in your career, right? And I think a lot of people right now in the real estate market, where the market isn't perfect, um, to take that call because you never know if that's going to be the reason the deal closes or the deal doesn't close. Um, I promise you that answering text message at 6 a.m. and not at 2 a.m., if someone is deep in a real estate cycle, is not going to be the difference between you closing the deal and not closing the deal. But you do need to intentionally block off time. Um, it doesn't. There can be nights where you pick up the phone at 9 p.m. It's going to happen. If you're early in your career, it's going to happen. But what you need to realize is if it's becoming habitual, if every single night of the week you are working until you fall asleep, okay, then you need to intentionally set some boundaries in your life, right? It happens every once in a while to all of us. If your work is important to you, I would argue probably it should happen. You should work some Sundays every once in a while. Every once in a while, things are going to happen during a weeknight where you have to work late. That's part of it, right? If you're passionate about something, you love something, or if it's feeding into the passions that you love, right? Like you're a real estate agent because you want to buy a house for your wife and your kids and you want to live a better life, and that's what you're living for. Then I say go for it and work the 60 hours a week, but you need to be intentional about blocking off time if things start to become habitual and they're taking away from, because eventually it's just going to take away from your performance, right? You can only work long hours so much before you're burnt out. I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen it. People who work insanely hard, they're insanely talented, and 2 years later they're burnt out and you never see them again because they've overworked themselves, and they've overstimulated themselves and they abandon the system entirely when really they could be using the system to their advantage while intentionally blocking off time.
Yeah, I think, for a lot of people, especially, you mentioned this as well, early on in their careers, right? Especially newer agents. I
Yeah.
see this all the time in new agents and in myself as well when I was starting out, even currently is, why, the reason why they tend to do that, right? The reason why we tend to, answer calls at 9 p.m., answer calls for, 3 a.m. in the morning even, is because they feel like that if, or at least this is the way I was thinking is, if you don't do that, then you're not going to be successful,
Right.
right? And then I realized that that's not the case, right? A lot of people think that if they don't pick up the phone every time they get a text or a call, they're never going to be successful. When that's, almost the complete opposite,
Yeah.
right? Of, actually achieving success is being intentional instead of being drug around by people that are you're working with. And sometimes, in my opinion, you can answer this as well and kind of give your thoughts on it, but sometimes, is it even worth it, right? Is it even
Mhm.
worth it for you to pick up the phone at 3 a.m. and risk your health, your mental health, your physical
Yeah.
health, right, your relationships for that deal to close? Or is there another deal down the line that you can pursue
Yeah.
that's less stressful, maybe even pays more?
Of course. Yeah. And I think the other thing too is, um, sure, you picked up that phone at 3 a.m. and that might be the reason that that deal closed, but you didn't sleep that day and it messed up your sleep the next day and the next day. And now all of a sudden 8 deals that were in your pipeline are screwed because you weren't physically there, you weren't mentally aware. And as much as we all say we can handle everything, you can't handle everything. Navy SEALs go to bed, okay? Like you need your rest, you need your time off. Um, and so yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. There's a pipeline management conversation that I don't know how relevant is here, right? Of like what how much a deal is worth your percentage of time versus its total value, right? I mean, that's a whole conversation that we can get into that I'm sure is right up your alley. But yeah, there are deals that are super stressful that don't make you that much money, and you should not worry about them that much. I think that's the short of it. There will be fatter deals that are less stress, or even if it's 4 deals that require the stress of that one deal that equal the same amount of money, take those 4 deals, not the one deal.
Yeah, that's something that I've come to realize as
Yeah,
well because it's something in real estate in any business, even
yeah,
not just real estate, any industry. It's just you feel like you need to close this one deal.
yeah,
You feel like, especially in the beginning, right? Where you don't have as many things going on, where you don't have this much maturity in your business and your
of
career,
course.
right? You're trying to kind of get after it, right? Trying to prove yourself a little bit almost to yourself, where you feel like you need to close certain clients, you need to work with certain
Yeah.
clients, right?
Well, that's the piece too, right? Is you're proving it to yourself.
Yeah.
You're proving it to yourself. That first, dude, I'm telling you, we're kindred spirits because I'm a sales guy, right? It's that first. I say that it's almost the first 2 years that you're selling anything. You are you're you feel like you're playing pretend, really, right? Like you don't feel like you're really doing it, even though even if you close $5 million in quota, right? It doesn't matter. Like you don't really like. There's imposter syndrome. It's gonna happen. It's part of it. But you need to that's why you have a pipeline, right? That's why you don't make your whole career on one deal. That's all. That's a sales discussion, not a this discussion, but that's why you have a pipeline, right? That's why you get 8 deals in the pipeline and not one. But also for the mental health discussion, right? That's why you prioritize your physical health and your mental well-being and all that stuff because you will perform better for those 7 deals that are worth your darn time.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It's something all salespeople struggle with. It's something
Yeah.
that everybody struggles with, I think, to a certain degree. But in sales, I see this all the time. I see this myself, right? I see those new agents who come in, into the industry as well, right? There's a lot they have to prove to themselves, and
Yeah.
they feel like, and a lot of it does come from, I think, going all the way, like circling all the way back to the beginning of a conversation of social media and watching other people that
Mm-hmm.
is out there. A lot of it does come from, I think, the influencers and the people promoting certain things and teaching certain concepts that are out there, right? You have to deal with,
Mm-hmm.
you have to go after it. You have to hunt after every deal, go after every client, or if you don't, then you're a failure and you're letting everybody down,
Yeah.
your family,
Yeah.
right? And you're a liability and this and that. And it's just not true. And the more intentional you are, I think the better you are when it comes to, building up your business, closing more deals, and performing even better, right? Instead of having to subject yourself, in my opinion, to
Yeah.
people that are truly not worth your time, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So,
Yeah. The Grant Cardones of the world have done us a lot of damage in that factor. And many others. But yeah, by the way, if you are looking for an alternative, that looking at Daniel Pink to Sales Human, it's maybe the greatest sales book ever written. But um, yeah, and you are going to proceed. Your brain works in a mechanism actually comparing your status to other people, right? Um, you cannot stop that from happening. That is something that is part of your ancient brain. That's not part of like the human brain. Um, but when you're looking at social media, you're looking at a distorted image of the truth, not a real image of the truth, right? If it's the 10 real estate agents that are in your office and you can see them work in and out every single day. Um, that's a real perspective of how well you're doing. Not looking on the internet and seeing the guy who's in a Lamborghini, which he probably rented, with a face that probably isn't his face because it's distorted from filters next to a girl that I don't know, maybe like he's like Dan Bilzerian and like he rented the girl or like there's a million like none of it's real. You just have to realize in your life that like okay, what I'm looking at right now is not real and also intentionally getting that kind of stuff out of my life. Like if you see someone flexing that makes you feel insignificant, get them out of your life. Like hit I am not interested in this content. It's gone. Remove it from your life. Seek influencers and people that will bring value to your life.
right. Yeah. Take control back, right? Take control back of
Exactly.
your life. Do not let other people control it. You have more control, I think, than you think.
Yeah.
And once you take that control, you feel a lot better. You get a lot more done.
Yeah.
And, you're just living a better lifestyle overall. So yeah, man. Well, Pat, dude, I appreciate you coming on and sharing everything that you had to share with us today. I think it was very valuable what you have to share in many different perspectives because many people are struggling, right? Whether in the real estate industry or not, they are struggling. There's certain things that really affect their lives, their mental health, their even their physical health. So it's really valuable what you had to share. So for anybody out there who want to either get a copy of your book, follow you on social media, right? Follow your content, right? And actually get some positive, intentional content in their feeds and their lives. What are some of the best places people can find you? How can they connect with you? And maybe even work together with you.
Yeah, and Kobe, first of all, before I start getting into my plug, I just want to say thank you so much for being really open. And I think it's brave of you even to have someone like me on this podcast, right? Because I think this is a conversation that not a lot of people would be willing to have. And so I really thank you for your generosity and your questions and just being willing to talk about this stuff, um, and helping the world find kind of their center, right? So thank you so much for that. You can find me on Instagram at PatBro, PATBROE. That is my last name. It's the best last name on earth. I'd like to thank my dad for that. You can buy my book, The Real Confident You. It's available on Amazon right now. It's the number one on the new release list on Amazon. It just came out this week, so really exciting news there. And those will be the two main ways you can find me. You can email me at the real confident you at gmail.com if you're interested in talking. Looking forward to hearing from all your wonderful listeners, and thank you again, Kobe, for the time.
Awesome, man. We'll make sure to plug all of that in the description, the show notes down below, so that way people can find it. But make sure you get a copy of Pat's book, The Real Confident You. I know I'm going to get my hands on a copy as well. So, you guys can learn a little bit more and dig deeper into it as well. But Pat, man, appreciate you again for being on the show. Before we let you go, is there any last pieces of advice, any last tips you want to leave with us before you sign off here?
We've covered a lot today. I think my last piece of advice to everybody is whatever you're going through in your life, you are not alone. You are not the only one. There are many, many people going through similar challenges, and anything that you're going through right now, I promise you've been through harder if you really start to look back at your past. Um, so please, if you're feeling down, the first thing you need to do is intentionally take some time, just step away from it all, take a deep breath, and everything's going to be okay. And seek information from people who you love in your life, and be honest and vulnerable with them, and the truth will find itself.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's great advice. Pat, thanks again for being here. Thanks again for sharing. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you in the next show. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.